Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Central Florida chapter's webinar this month. I'm losing train of thought for my introduction here. We have Andy here, our tax expert for the travel industry, going through and talking to us about what we need to know as travel professionals as we get ready for tax season. As we go through this, if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. Say hi if you haven't already. You'll also be able to come off mute and kind of talk as well when we get to the questions part. I'm sure Andy doesn't have a problem with us asking questions because we want this to be engaging. However, please keep yourself muted while we're doing the presentation so that we all can hear it. Otherwise, Andy, feel free to take it away.
Perfect. I'm going to try to share my screen here, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Okay,
Got it.
got it.
Yeah.
All right, let me
Yep.
see if I can get all of the Zoom stuff off of here so I can see what I'm doing. Yeah, and then as I go through, I'm going to have a couple little quizzes or whatever, so feel free to throw those into the chat. That's always interesting to see what people have to say. Let me just get the Zoom part of it back up and running here. Okay. So yeah, like Scott said, my name's Andy. I'm with Taxes for Travel Agents, company I started. But first of all, thank you everybody for coming to this. It's really exciting. When I started this business, I didn't think that there would be a lot of interest from travel advisors when it comes to the tax side of things, and it was only interesting to me. But it's grown, it's been great, and I love doing the educational side of things. That's what I'm passionate about. So just quickly on who I am, Andrew Rude, Andy Rude, depends on who you are, what you call me. I have a company called Taxes for Travel Agents, and I focus on tax preparation, tax planning, and the financial education for travel agents. I am an enrolled agent, which is a credential through the Internal Revenue Service that gives me kind of unlimited representation rights for taxpayers. I started this business mainly because my wife is a travel advisor, and when she became a travel advisor, she did so because she loved travel, right? She loved talking about travel, selling travel, traveling herself. But she really had no interest in the business side or the tax side. So I've always kind of helped her on that side of things. And friends of hers would reach out to me, friends of friends, and then it's just grown and grown and grown and grown. And so here I am today doing this presentation for you. So I'm really glad to be here. So as far as kind of what we're going to look at today, we're going to talk. It's a basic presentation. We're not going to get too far into the weeds on any one topic. I'm happy to do Q&A at the end, but it's a big overview of kind of what you should have in place for 2025. If you're kind of feeling this year, you're getting to January and you feel lost, you feel confused, you feel stressed out. What can we do this year so that you don't end up in the same place as you are currently? And then what you need to know for this year, whether you do your own taxes or you have someone do them for you, what kind of information do you need to have together? And what are some of the sort of the tax deductions and things that are available to small travel advisors? My trainings and all that, it really focuses on the kind of that independent small travel advisor, the sole proprietor, single member LLCs, independent contractors, things like that. Not a lot of what I'm going to cover is real in depth for big corporations or big companies. I'm trying to help those that have those small companies. And then at the very end, I'll share some different resources that are available for you out there, as well as some services that I offer and have. Legality wise, I have to let you know that this training is for educational purposes only, and it's not intended to be personalized tax or legal advice. Make sure you consult a tax professional to assess your specific situation. So with that, let's get started. Are you operating like a business? That's the first question that we kind of have to ask, because there's two things that you can operate as. You can operate as a hobby and you can operate as a business. And they're two very different things and they have different consequences with them, right? So as a hobby, you're pursuing that activity for enjoyment and you don't really have a profit motive. When I think of hobbies, for example, my wife, she loves to make jewelry, like seashell jewelry, sea glass jewelry, things like that. And sometimes people will actually buy them from her, but she doesn't treat it like a business. She doesn't expense anything. She doesn't, keep books, anything like that. It's a hobby for her. It's okay if you have a hobby. It's okay even if you are a travel advisor as a hobby, but you need to understand that there are limitations. You report all of your income still from hobbies, and that goes on Schedule 1. And don't get worried about, what form it goes on. Just know it's somewhere else than business. And the main thing with a hobby is that you cannot deduct any expenses. You don't have a business, so you cannot deduct any business expenses. And if you have ever taken any of the free lessons in the digital course that I put together, this is one of the free ones, Hobby versus Business, to make sure that it's for you. A business is something that focuses on making a profit. You meet the IRS factors, you're operating like a business, you report everything on Schedule C for single member LLCs and sole proprietors, and you can deduct business expenses. And the reason that I do this slide very upfront and first is because everything that I focus on, everything that we talk about today, all kinds of tax deductions, all of that type of stuff, assumes you are operating as a business. All right, so that's why I like to do this slide very first. So organizing your finances, and I don't know where everybody is with their finance side of things, but a lot of times what I see with new travel advisors, whether they come into the Facebook group or they do a consult with me or something along those lines, this tends to be how people get started, right? Their business income is going into their personal bank account. And from that personal bank account, they're paying out business expenses, they're paying out personal expenses, they're doing all kinds of things like this. As a sole proprietor, if you just get started doing this, it's okay. People start this way, but you need to move away from this system as quickly as possible. You're commingling your personal and your business money. You're not able to consistently track your income and expenses. It's very difficult to track the health and profitability of your business, and you have no sort of planning for tax time. So if you look at this and you think that this is kind of how you're operating, I want you to try at least to get to where we are on this next slide here. And this is what I call like the responsible travel agent. And this is what I want to see base level for every single person in this industry. And that is your business income is being put into a business bank account, or at least a dedicated bank account with its own debit card, checking account, all of those kind of things. And from that account, you are paying your business expenses, and you are transferring money, if you need money for personal stuff, to a personal account to pay for your personal expenses. You're able to separate your business and personal finances, which is extremely important when it comes to making sure that we're operating like a business. You're tracking your income and expenses. You'll have a much better idea on the health and profitability of your business, but you still might be a little surprised at tax time if you don't have the right system set up. And there's other ones where I go over talking about like a Savvy and talking about retirement accounts and things like that. But this here is where all travel advisors should be at a very basic base level. This is a snapshot of Wave accounting software that I utilize and other travel advisors utilize, and you can use whatever you want. But the goal should be you have a system in place to where you get to the end of the year, you can easily pull up what your net income is, what your expenses were, what you spent your money on, and a categorized set of expenses. Too many times I run into different travel advisors who are right now in January trying to figure out what they spent, when they spent it, and trying to put together their books. And that's really what we're trying to avoid for looking for 2025. So I always suggest, like I did on the previous slide, that you make sure you have a separate business bank account set up. And it does not have to be complicated by any means. It should be free. It should be easy. If you bank with somebody currently, they're probably more than likely willing to set you up with something. Your business income goes into that account. Your business expenses come out of that. You fund it as an owner contribution. It's not considered income. And you withdraw as an owner draw, and it's not a deductible expense. I only put Bluevine on here because this is what I use for my business. My wife uses it for her business. It's an online bank. I don't get anything from them. It's just worked really well from us. So if you don't have your own bank, someone that can open up a business account for you, Bluevine is a good solution that you can do from anywhere. The other thing that I see lacked among newer travel advisors and some that have been around is not having some sort of a bookkeeping system in place. And this can seem kind of like an overwhelming thing. I mean, it's something new that you have to learn potentially, but it's a system to track your income and expenses. And I try to tell everyone it doesn't matter how you do it. I don't care how you do it. You just need to do it. You can simply use a notebook. You can use an Excel or a Google Sheet. If you go to my website, the taxesfortravelagents.com, on the downloads area and the resources, I have a free Google Sheet that you can go there, download, and I have travel advisors that are my clients that actually still use this. And it's really kind of exciting for me because I made it years ago, but they'll use this and send me a copy of it, and it's fun to see other ones using it. And it's especially good for, someone that's just starting out. Like if you don't have a lot of transactions, it's a great way to start tracking your income and expenses. And most people know how to use a Google Sheet or Excel. There are lots and lots of different softwares out there. Most of them offer some type of a free trial. So try them out, see what works for you, see what doesn't work for you. There's people that use QuickBooks. Sometimes for others that can be overwhelming, too powerful. There's FreshBooks, Xero, Wave is what I use. They have a free version that you can start out with, and then you can have paid versions in the future. But kind of figure out what works for you. And then the third thing is schedule a time each and every week that you do this bookkeeping side of things. It might be 30 minutes, it might be an hour, but schedule a time. You have scheduled times to do everything else. You need to put a scheduled time in place to do these type of things. What records need to be kept? All right, so this comes mainly from the IRS saying that the records that you keep need to be timely and adequate. Timely meaning the general rule of thumb is weekly. So they do not want you at the end of the month or at the end of the year trying to go back and put together what your expenses were for the entire year, because that is impossible. Even weekly, I'll forget what transactions were for if I don't keep up with them often. Adequate meaning what type of things do you need to keep track of? Well, the date of the expense, the amount of the expense, who or what it was for, the business purpose, and receipts to prove the purchase. Now, this might seem like a lot of information, but you have this information so long as you have the systems that we just talked about in place. Your accounting software is going to have everything that's listed above. And if you have receipts for the purchases, there you go. You have all the things that have been outlined above. I put this statement on the bottom where it says the burden of proof is on you. And that's words that the IRS uses. They say the burden of proof is on the taxpayer. And basically what that means is, unlike our legal system where you are innocent until you're proven guilty, with the IRS, you are guilty until you prove your innocence. So if the IRS comes to you and says that your travel or your business expenses, whatever it might be, is not deductible, it is not an ordinary necessary business expense, it is up to you. The burden of proof is on you to prove otherwise. So document, document, document. That is by far the most important thing. So for 2025, separate your personal and business finances. Separate bank account, get that set up if you haven't already. Put a system in place to track your income and expenses. And what most people do not do is schedule a dedicated time each week so that you can keep your books updated. However long that it might take, you'll be much, much, much happier and satisfied at the end of the year. So let's talk about this upcoming year, right? 2024 is over. April's coming up. What do you need to gather? Much of what I'm going to go over in the next several slides comes from this tax prep checklist I put together. Again, it's 100% free on my website. You can go over there, download it. One of the nice benefits of this is when we talk about these different topics. So if we're talking about home office, business use of vehicle, different business expenses, there's links in there, and it links to the IRS website, to the different publications that are associated with it. Do you need to send a 1099 NEC? So what is the date today? It is the 28th. You have until the end of January to send out 1099s should you need to. And this can be kind of a complicated topic, but we're going to do it in a couple slides, and just so make sure everyone can understand when you may need to send one. So if your business paid another business or an individual for services, this can be like an independent contractor or virtual assistant or someone like that, and you paid them over $600, and you paid them by cash, check, ACH, or third-party app on friends and family, and they are not a corporation, now there's exceptions for legal services, then you do need to send them a 1099. So it's important to know what you paid them for, how much you paid them, how you paid them, and what their business entity type is. So if we look at these things, you should know what you paid them for, right? If you're using some sort of accounting software, you know where your money's going. If you're also tracking your expenses, you should know how much you paid them. You should also know how you paid them, and you want to know if they are a corporation or not. Well, how do you know if they're a corporation or not? That is why whenever you work with some type of independent contractor, you want to make sure you get a W-9 from them so you have their taxpayer information, and that form will tell you whether or not, what their business structure is. So hopefully everybody was listening on that first slide. So I have a quick little quiz, and you can put your answers in the chat if you want. But the question is, you paid a single member LLC independent contractor, they're a subagent, you paid them $700 for services by the following different methods. Which ones require you to issue a 1099 NEC? Okay, I see all E's, and everybody is actually wrong. In this situation, you would need to send them a 1099 if you paid them by bank or ACH transfer. If you paid them by credit card or debit card, then the credit card company or the debit card company is going to issue them a 1099-K. And this hasn't really been an issue in the past, but the 1099-K, which is supposed to be issued by third-party payment processors, things like that, that limit, that reporting limit used to be around $20,000. It's coming down to $5,000, then $2,500, and then it'll be $600, I think, in 2026. The issue you can run into is if you send somebody a 1099 NEC who you paid by credit card or debit card, they may also receive a 1099-K. And now that income, the same income, has been reported 2 times to that individual and 2 times to the IRS. So as a tax professional, as them, that's okay. They're going to have to back it out. They're going to have to explain that away. But we want to avoid this double sending out 1099s. Same thing goes for Venmo. If you pay them to a Venmo business account, or you mark goods and services when you're using a third-party payment processor, then the third-party payment processor will send them a 1099-K. So you don't need to issue them a 1099 NEC. If you pay them through Venmo, friends and family, that is basically the equivalent of paying somebody in cash. There's no transaction fees. The third-party payment processor will not send them a 1099-K. So it's really important to kind of understand how you've paid them. And one of my recommendations is that you pick a method to pay your independent contractors and you stick with it. So if you're going to pay them by debit card, credit card, or Venmo business account, something along those lines, then you know that you don't need to issue 1099s at the end of the year. But if you're paying them by certain other methods, then you would need to issue them a 1099 NEC. ACH and Zelle. Zelle is considered basically same as cash, same as an ACH transfer. So you would issue when paying through Zelle. One other question. I'm just going to answer a couple of these questions since we're on this topic, Scott, if that's okay, since I don't know what our time limit is, but.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. How do we send a 1099 NEC? You can either go straight to the IRS website. They have an option for doing it. I find it very clunky and not very useful. There is a couple different companies that do it. Avlara, I believe they're called, or Track 1099. Both really easy to use. You log in, you put in your taxpayer information, the person that you're paying, and you pay a small fee. It's a few dollars, and they'll send a 1099 to your contractor, and they'll send a 1099 to the IRS, and you can print out a copy for yourself. So it's not overly complicated process, but understanding when you need to send it and when you do not is important. Income. All right. all income is required to be reported. Even if it's obtained illegally, the IRS says, you have to report your illegal income. Even if you do not receive a 1099, you're still supposed to report that income. One of the biggest red flags that I see with different businesses and people is when their gross income does not match up with the 1099s. It's less than the amount of 1099s you received. You need to understand that when you receive a 1099, the IRS also receives a 1099. So they're looking for that to match up. Typically, your gross income is going to be more than the amount of 1099s you had. You should not be, oh, thought someone was telling me I was wrong, but they're already answering the question. Okay, gotcha. Yeah, you should not be relying on your 1099s to keep track of how much income you've made. You should be relying on your accounting software and how you're tracking those things to understand where your income comes from. So the quiz, which some of you have already answered, you received a $150 commission check from a supplier in the mail. The supplier did not send you a 1099, therefore you do not need to include this in your gross income. Everyone is correct. False. That's very good. Question in there, why would gross income be more than your 1099s? Because if you had a vendor or somebody that paid you less than $600, they may not issue you a 1099. Or if you, for example, had a planning fees that you were going through a third-party payment processor and they didn't send you a 1099K because you didn't meet the reporting requirements, they might not report that to you. So that's why your gross income will either be right where your 1099s are, or it can be a little bit more. That's typically what you'll see. Business expenses. So to be deductible, a business expense must be ordinary and necessary. So what does this mean? It means that an ordinary expense is one that is common and accepted in your industry, and a necessary expense is one that is helpful and appropriate for your business. That's the definition the IRS gives us, and it's not extremely helpful, but that's kind of what we have to go off of. The tax courts have also said that there shall be allowed a deduction for expenses paid or incurred during the taxable year for the production or collection of income. And you have to understand why the IRS allows you to deduct business expenses. They understand that it costs money to operate a business, and they expect that by giving you kind of the grace and the latitude to deduct your business expenses, it'll help you grow your business and you will be more profitable in the future and in turn pay more in taxes in the future. That is why you're allowed to have this. So you kind of have to ask yourself, with your expenses, are they potentially making you more profitable in the future? Also, if we are S Corp, they don't necessarily send a 1099. Yeah, so you don't need to send 1099s to corporations, but again, you would need that information from them to know. There's no way of knowing whether they're a corporation or not unless you ask. Common expenses that I see, advertising, Facebook ads, website, things like that. Commission fees, host fees, insurance, office expenses, taxes and licenses, meals, contract labor, travel, which we'll kind of touch on the next slide, and then a lot of other type of expenses. As a sole proprietor, single member LLC, you report all of your expenses and your income on Schedule C. This is the expense section from Schedule C, and you can see that the IRS has all these different categories for us. Your goal as a business owner should be to try to fit as much as possible your expenses into these categories. If they do not, you'll see on line 27A where it says other expenses, there's a whole other section where you can list out other expenses. But again, usually your software is going to have categories. Here's the categories from Schedule C. Try your best to fit them into these sections, and then if they don't, you can utilize other sections. Oh, yes. It won't let me close it. All right. It's going to have to stay there. I don't know why it won't close. All right. Travel deductions. And now it's gone. All right. Perfect. Travel deductions. This is a very in-depth topic that we do not have the time to go into. The class that I've done on it and other trainings are hour plus or more on these topics. Note that with the IRS, they have different rules that apply to travel within the US, foreign travel, and cruise ships. And the different rules apply separately to each portion of your trip. The best resource that I can give you is IRS Publication 463. You can just Google that, and it's a free PDF that you can download, and it has tons and tons of information. It's not the most exciting read in the world, but that's where a lot of this information is going to come from with regards to travel deductions. Business use of a vehicle. This is another one that applies to travel advisors quite a bit. It's basically driving your personal vehicle for business. Most travel advisors do not have a dedicated business vehicle. You're not driving that much. You're not, doing a delivery service or something like that. So you're driving your vehicle, your personal vehicle, for business purposes. There are two methods that you can deduct your expenses. There's the actual, and then there's the mileage. Basically, everybody that I work with utilizes the mileage method, and it's meant to cover all of your vehicle costs. So it's meant to cover fuel, it's meant to cover repairs, it's meant to, wear and tear, all of those type of things. So all you need to do is keep track of your miles. In 2024, it was 67 cents per mile. I believe in 2025, it's going to be around 70 cents a mile. The most important thing when it comes to the business use of your vehicle is that you have written records. And that's something that if you're utilizing me, I'm going to ask you, your tax software will ask you, a tax professional will ask you, yes, this is how many miles you drove, this is the car you used, but do you have written documentation of those miles? And that is the date, the distance, the destination, and the business purpose for your driving. There's apps out there that you can utilize. I know a lot of people just ask around in my Facebook group. People have listed out like the different apps that they use. You can use a notebook, you can use an Excel sheet, you can use whatever you want, but make sure you have written records that include these things, should you be asked for them. Home office deduction, another great one for travel advisors. The space that you utilize needs to be regularly and exclusively used. And we'll try to explain this to you real quick. Regularly means it is this place in which you regularly work from. All right, that is your normal workspace for your office. And it's normally fairly easy to meet this requirement. It's your regular place that you work. Exclusively is the more difficult one to meet, and that means that it is used exclusively. That is the only use for that area. And a lot of times people run into the issue, and we'll talk about this in the quiz, but there's two options. There's the simplified method and there's the actual method. We won't dive too deep into it, but the simplified method is simply $5 times the square foot of your office. The actual method is based on the percent that your office occupies in your home, and there's direct and indirect expenses. So we have people answering the quiz already. The travel agent in the photo regularly works from here every day. Can she take the home office deduction? No, she cannot. And the reason that she cannot is because it's not exclusively used for working as a home office, right? There's the couch in there. I can see other things. It's pretty clear to me that it's not an exclusive use of the space. It's probably the living room. And don't get me wrong, you may work from the kitchen table sometimes. You might work from the couch every once in a while. But the area that you're using as regularly and exclusively for your home office needs to be exclusively for your home. This doesn't necessarily mean it has to be an entire room in your home, but it needs to be an area in your home that is dedicated to your office. So if you have a room that has some other things in it, maybe it has a bed or a couch or whatever, you can only use that area in which your desk is located. Think of it this way. If the IRS was to say, hey, we're going to stop by and take a look at your home office or send us a picture of your home office, is there going to be a whole bunch of, a baby crib and toys and couches and all kinds of other things in the background? Or is it going to look like an office and be dedicated and specific to your office? Ooh, I don't think I skipped anything. All right, perfect. So talk about some resources that are out there. CPAs, enrolled agents are typically great people to talk to when it comes to the tax and finance side of things. CPAs are people who are a great foundation in finance, usually college degree in the finance stuff, and normally they have a very broad knowledge, and some will specialize in taxes, some will specialize in accounting, some will specialize in a lot of other things. Enrolled agents are individuals like myself, and I focus solely on the tax side of things. The IRS website has some other really, really good information on it. It's getting better and better each year, I feel like. So go there, you can see a lot of stuff. I mentioned this before, but IRS publication 463 is a great resource for the travel side of things. Almost everything related to travel can be answered in there, so long as you're willing to read through it in detail. The Small Business Administration also has some really great resources for running a small business. What are not resources? TikTok, Instagram. There is some great tax advice and tax information out there from certain people, and there is some absolutely terrible advice that makes me very, very angry, because they provide you 10% truth and 90% fluff, maybe, maybe not. And there's no consequences for any of that information that's incorrect. Relatives, your uncle, Jim, or whatever, take all that with a grain of salt. Facebook, again, what people tell you online, try to ignore those type of things. I have resources out there. I've talked about a few of these. I have the expense tracking form, free to check out. It's a great place to start if you have nothing. Tax prep checklist. Again, a lot of that is what we covered today, but it has links to, do you need to send a 1099, expenses, home office, all of those type of things. Great place to go look. I have a small tax guide that I sell on my website that has a lot of what we covered today, but some additional information within it. And then I put together a tax class that I put it together last year because I can't help everybody. I can't do everybody's taxes. So I put this together, and if you use the code Facebook15, you get 15% off. We go through lots of different topics. You can kind of see them all listed here. I have downloads and cheat sheets. I have travel deduction flow sheets in there, which is basically I've taken publication 463, everything that's in there, and put them into these nice flow sheets, because it was confusing to me when I first was reading through them. And so I put these flow sheets together to help convey to my clients, to help me understand how these different travel deductions work, whether you're in the US or you're traveling cruise ship or whatever it might be. So I think we're at the point, I don't know time-wise, it's about 8:30 to do some Q&A. Just trying to see what else we got in the chat here. If you Zelle an associate their commission, what do you categorize it as? It would probably be contract labor or outside services. That would be what I would categorize it at. What if I pay my personal bills from my office, or if I use my PC for both work and business? In my opinion, like if you use your office exclusively for your business, and in the evening you have to sit down at your computer and send some bills or do whatever, yeah, that's probably acceptable. That's minimal use of the space for other stuff. And again, using your PC for work and business, technically when you purchase the PC, you're supposed to decide what percent business, what percent that you're using for personal, and you would allocate the expenses like that. How can you find a CPA who understands the travel business? That's a good question, and that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. There's lots of CPAs out there. There's lots of people that can work with small businesses. I started this business mainly because that was something that lacked. Yeah, I wish I had a great answer for you. I believe all of us on this Zoom reside in Florida, and while there is no income tax, there is something we need to file as an LLC or S Corp. I don't know if there's like, I guess I don't understand that. Are you asking tax wise, or are you asking like, is there a specific form that needs to be filed? I don't know how to properly answer that. Can you speak a little about accountable plans for S corporations? Yeah, I mean, just briefly, that's one of the things with S corporations when you set them up. you need to have some type of an accountable plan in place, which essentially, and if you just Google accountable plan and look through the IRS, they'll probably have an example for you. But basically, you need to be treating yourself like an employee, right? So you're turning in an expense report to your business, which is your S corporation, and they are paying you for those expenses. State filing, not IRS. So I don't know specifically in Florida. I know you don't have Florida income tax, so there's no state tax, but there should be no state income tax return that needs to be filed, but they may have something for LLCs where you need to, file your articles of organization, you need to keep them up annually. I don't know the specifics on that. Is credit card charge adequate for receipt, or I need the specific receipt from the vendor? It's always best to have a receipt. I'll always recommend that you have a receipt, whatever you can get. Again, it's not something that you need to send to the IRS. It's not something you typically need to provide to your tax preparer or have right there. But in the event of an audit, you need to be able to go and gather those things. And so what I tell my wife is any receipts that you get, anything, just dump them in a 2024 folder, or if you can organize them monthly or whatever, that's perfectly fine. Just have it there. And if you get in the position where you need to provide those things, at that point, you can go through and try to organize them as best as you can. Ooh, okay.
A lot of information.
Lot of information.
We'll give a few moments for anyone that's digesting. If you have some questions, feel free to add them into the chat, or if they're more complicated, feel free to come off mute. You see Andy's website on the screen. Feel
Yep.
free to head over there for any resources. But is that taxesfortravelagents.com/resources, or is this /resources.com?
Uh, it should be /resources.com. If you just go to my website, taxesfortravelagents.com, you can just go right to the resources tab. It probably is /resources now that you say it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other great place too is Facebook. I have a Facebook group, Taxes for Travel Agents. Just search it up. We go, lots of people ask questions. It's a great place to, share information. I try to minimize any bullying or anything like that. I boot people for being rude. So I know that can always be scary. And I allow people to post anonymously if you have an anonymous kind of financial question that you want to ask. And I try to answer each and every one of those to the best of my ability. And then we have other CPAs and other people that are in that group that are probably not practicing CPAs, but there were CPAs who are now travel advisors, so they're willing to provide their input as well.
Let's see here. Rachel, raising your hand. You can come off.
Come off
Yeah.
mic. Yeah, I'm the one who asked the accountable plan question, and
Oh, yes.
my business partner and I, we have an S corp, and we're in Tampa, and we're 100% going to be contacting you. We've been doing our taxes all this time with a CPA, and I guess she just said a lot of rules changed in like 2018, 2019. We both have home offices. We used to deduct those expenses. We're an S corp, and none of that has happened since then. And she's just said because we haven't submitted an accountable plan, and is this something that we're supposed to submit somewhere? Not a
No,
lot of things get answered for us by
yeah,
our CPA.
that's unfortunate. No, accountable plan isn't something that needs to be submitted to anyone. It's a plan that your business has, and it's basically what the business's agreement is to reimburse their employees essentially for certain expenses. So, for example, your home office, you cannot do a home office deduction because you're our employee. But your S corporation may have an accountable plan saying we will reimburse our employees for these expenses, or will whatever that. So it's your own personal plan through your business that says these are the rules that we're going to follow. And honestly, there should be some templates out there, and I don't work with a lot of like S corporations because I said I focus a lot more on like sole proprietors, single member LLCs, things like that. But yeah, that's what it is, and they should be able to find some templates out there. If I find something, I can always try to send it over your way.
Do you take on S corps?
I don't have any room for more clients this year.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, so yeah, that's one of my pet peeves of people not providing education side of things or answering questions just like you have. Like it's not that complicated and it doesn't take that long. But
Can I expand on this question? And thank you. As far as accountants versus bookkeepers, maybe that's where we've sometimes been confused because we hired a CPA, but it seems like it's just been like you just submit it, I file it, and you should be having someone else do all your questions, like maybe bookkeeper wise. Is that like are we doing it wrong?
no, kind of like I said previously with different people, like a CPA, they're going to specialize in certain things.
Mhm.
Some may just be doing taxes. And sometimes when you're doing the tax side of things, like I could easily do this too, of just you submit your stuff to me and I just file it. Like it's as a tax preparer, tax professional, I have to ask
Mhm.
certain questions, but it's not my duty to like audit you, right? So if you say, hey, this is
Okay.
what I had for business expenses, this is what I had for travel, food, whatever, I'm not going to sit there and question you. I don't have the time to do it, and it's not my responsibility. Um, but yeah, try to educate as much as I can so that you know what you can deduct, what you cannot. So yeah,
Thank you.
I couldn't specify what this person knows and what they do not know. Yeah.
If I can chime in, Andrew, my name is Dartania. I am an accountant, and I do
Oh,
also have my travel business as well. Um, and if Rachel, I can definitely put my information in the chat, and if you want to give me a call, I can definitely give you some information about that difference between your bookkeeping and your accountant, and some things that like you said, CPAs only kind of specialize in certain areas, and that person may just you bring me the information, I'm going to put it together, and they're not doing anything as far as helping with your journal entries, anything like that. So if you have any other questions, I mean, if I'm not overstepping, I would love to answer your questions for you, Rachel. Thank you,
Sent.
Andrew.
perfect.
Awesome. Thank you. So John has a question. He needs help determining startup costs versus expenses. Are you able to help him with that on a project basis?
Yeah. If you go to my website too, I have like a one-on-one kind of consult section that you can set up a consult for me and we can just sit down and chat for an hour or so. It's a paid thing, but to kind of dive into more questions.
Awesome. And then next one coming in from Ryan. Going on a fam cruise in March. I know I can't claim it as a business expense. Is it smart to put the cost on my business credit card just to keep business expenses together?
Um, so this is like when it comes to cruises, it's a very muddy area. I suggest you read publication 463. I wrote a blog post on it on my website, kind of looking at the differences between what you can deduct, what you cannot deduct, what the IRS regulations say, all of those kind of things. If you want to make an expense from your business account and it's for personal purposes, then you just classify it as basically an owner draw. That's what you would expense it as. So it's a personal expense out of a business account. You're basically just transferring it to your personal account. My recommendation would be call it an owner draw, put it into your personal account and pay for personal stuff that way. That's the cleanest way to go about it.
Let me get back to my spot. Linda's asking, I have two sub agents. One received $600 in commissions, the others did not. So is this a deductible expense on my part and then still provide the 1099?
Yeah, so I mean, if it was for your business for services and you paid them over $600, you would provide them 1099 NEC. And again, it depends on how you paid them. But again, if you go and if you download that tax prep checklist that's free on my website, there's one of the first things you can click on takes you to the IRS website, tells you whether or not you need to send a 1099. Like that, it'll explain that to you. If you didn't pay them over $600, then you don't need to send them a 1099.
Let's see. Where on the website are your tax prep forms?
Should be under resources. Yeah, if you just click resources. There you go. Oh yeah, there's the blog post I wrote because I get that question a lot. And again, when it comes to the cruise side of things, you may get varying opinions from different people on that. I wrote that blog post based on the best of my knowledge, tax court cases, IRS publications, all of those kind of things. That's my opinion on the matter. And if something changes in tax courts or whatever, then I will change my opinion, but that's kind of where I'm at on it right now.
Awesome. I don't necessarily see any other questions, just a few comments in here. I'll give us another moment. We've got a couple of minutes. If anybody else has thought of anything. All right, I don't see anything coming in. Thank you, Andy, for doing this
Yeah.
for us. This is very, very informative. If you all have any additional questions, check out his resources, the blogs, even schedule a one-to-one consult if you would like. Otherwise, thank you all for coming in today, and I hope you have a great rest of the week and the last few days of January.
Yes, thank you for having me. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.